Commander Jake Morrison stopped dead in his tracks when he heard the radio crackle. Tango down, 3,247 meters, confirmed kill. He grabbed the handset, his voice sharp with disbelief. "Say again your distance, Raven." The response came back steady and calm. 3, 2, 4, 7 meters, sir. Wind correction 8.2 mils left. Elevation 31 clicks up. Morrison stared across the compound at the slight figure cleaning her Barrett matey, 201, like it was just another day at the office. He'd been watching Petty Officer Second Class Sarah Raven Mackenzie for 6 months, assuming she was just another support tech who happened to maintain the sniper rifles. Want to know what happened when a Navy SEAL commander discovered his weapons maintenance specialist had been hiding the longest confirmed kill shot in SEAL team history? Petty Officer Second Class Sarah Mackenzie had perfected the art of being invisible. At 27, she stood 5'6" with auburn hair, always pulled back in regulation fashion, and steel-gray eyes that seemed to notice everything while revealing nothing. Most of the operators at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado knew her as the quiet weapons tech who could strip and reassemble any rifle system in record time, always delivering perfectly zeroed equipment with methodical precision. What they didn't know was that Sarah's hands had been wrapped around rifle stocks since she was 8 years old, up in the Alaskan wilderness where her grandfather, Master Gunnery Sergeant William Mackenzie, had taught her that precision shooting was both science and art. The old Marine had served 3 tours in Vietnam as a sniper, and when Sarah's parents died in a car accident, he'd raised her in the remote mountains outside Fairbanks, where the nearest neighbor was 12 miles away, and silence was measured in degrees below zero. "Distance is just math, little Raven," her grandfather would say during those endless summer days when Alaska's sun never set, and they'd practice on targets positioned across vast tundra valleys. "Wind is conversation. Elevation is prayer. But the shot that's pure will meeting perfect preparation." By 16, Sarah was consistently hitting targets at ranges that would challenge seasoned military snipers. By 18, she'd internalized ballistic calculations that most operators needed computers to process. When her grandfather passed during her junior year of high school, Sarah enlisted in the Navy at 17 with his blessing, carrying his Vietnam-era scope as her most treasured possession. But the Navy had other plans. Despite scoring perfect marks in every shooting qualification, despite demonstrating technical knowledge that surpassed many instructors, Sarah found herself assigned to weapons maintenance rather than scout sniper school. The unofficial reason was whispered in corridors. The SEAL community wasn't ready for female snipers in operational roles, regardless of capability. So Sarah adapted. She became indispensable as the tech who could diagnose scope alignment issues by feel, who could predict equipment failures before they happened, who delivered weapon systems that performed flawlessly under combat conditions. She listened to after-action reports from returning operators, mentally cataloging environmental factors, target behaviors, and tactical adaptations. She studied every shot report that crossed her desk, building a comprehensive database of real-world ballistic performance that existed nowhere in official manuals. The operators respected her technical expertise, but saw her as support personnel valuable, certainly, but not someone who understood the weight of pulling the trigger when lives hung in the balance. Sarah let them maintain that assumption while she practiced at the base range during off hours, shooting at distances that would have raised eyebrows if anyone had been paying attention. She qualified expert with every weapon system the teams employed, often outscoring the operators themselves, but always late at night when the range was officially closed. Commander Jake Morrison represented everything traditional about Navy SEAL leadership. 42 years old with 23 years of service, he'd earned his trident through Bud, S-Class, 234, and commanded operations from Afghanistan to the South China Sea. His chest bore the testimony of a career spent in hard places: Bronze Star with V device, Purple Heart, Navy Cross for actions during a hostage rescue in Somalia. Morrison believed in proven methods, established hierarchies, and the hard-earned wisdom that came from surviving situations where split-second decisions meant the difference between mission success and body bags. He'd noticed Mackenzie during his first week at Coronado, primarily because she was the only female petty officer working directly with the SEAL team's weapons systems. Morrison's initial assessment had been purely professional, technically competent, attentive to detail, reliable under pressure. She'd impressed him by identifying a microscopic crack in a Mark 11 receiver that 3 other techs had missed, potentially preventing a catastrophic failure that could have killed an operator. "Good eye, Mackenzie," he'd said that day, and meant it. But in Morrison's mind, there was a clear distinction between technical competence and operational capability. He'd seen too many support personnel who could talk a good game about weapons systems, but had never felt the responsibility of making a shot that would save or cost American lives. Morrison's attitude wasn't born of malice but of experience. In 23 years of service, he'd worked with exceptional operators who'd earned their positions through brutal selection processes and proven themselves under fire. The idea that a weapons tech, regardless of technical knowledge, could possess operational-level shooting skills without having gone through the same crucible simply didn't align with his understanding of military capability. Development. "Mackenzie knows her job," he'd told Master Chief Ramirez during one of their weekly briefings. "But don't mistake technical knowledge for tactical capability. There's a difference between understanding how a rifle works and using it to take a life at 1,000 meters while someone's shooting back." The mission briefing had been routine, intelligence gathering, and possible high-value target elimination in the mountains of eastern Afghanistan. SEAL Team 7's Alpha Platoon would insert via helicopter to observe suspected Taliban leadership meeting in a compound nestled between 2 ridgelines. The operation required precision equipment, and Morrison had specifically requested Mackenzie as part of the support element to ensure their sniper systems performed flawlessly in the high-altitude, low-humidity environment. Sarah had spent 3 days before insertion testing and adjusting the team's primary sniper rifle, a Barrett 150 caliber system, for the environmental conditions they'd face. She'd calculated density altitude corrections for 200 feet, adjusted scope settings for the dramatic temperature variations between day and night, and hand-loaded match-grade ammunition optimized for the specific rifle's harmonics. Her preparation was methodical, almost obsessive, because she understood that in her world, imperfection meant operators came home in boxes. The insertion went smoothly. Alpha Platoon established an observation post on a ridgeline, overlooking the target compound, with excellent sight lines, but at an extreme range of over 3,000 meters. Morrison positioned his primary sniper, Petty Officer, First Class Dave Hawk Henderson, with the Barrett system while maintaining overwatch through high-powered optics. The mission was supposed to be simple. Observe, identify, report. Everything changed when the Taliban fighters opened fire on a British patrol that had stumbled into the valley below. The patrol was pinned down in open ground, taking casualties, with wounded soldiers lying exposed while Taliban fighters maneuvered for killing shots from prepared positions. Morrison faced an impossible tactical decision: engage targets at a range that exceeded his sniper's demonstrated capability, or watch Allied forces die while waiting for air support that was 20 minutes out. Henderson's first shot missed high, the second fell short. At 200 meters, environmental factors created a margin of error that turned even experienced snipers into beginners. Morrison watched through his spotting scope as more British soldiers fell, knowing that conventional doctrine said his shot was impossible, but unable to accept that Americans would watch Allies die because of range limitations. "Sir, request permission to engage," Sarah said quietly. appearing at Morrison's shoulder, with her grandfather's Vietnam-era scope in her hands. Morrison turned, incredulous. "Mackenzie, this isn't the time. Commander, I can make that shot." Her voice carried absolute certainty. No hesitation or bravado. Winds consistent at 12 knots from the northwest. Temperatures dropped 4 degrees since we arrived, and the mirage patterns show stable air density. "I've run the calculations. Your weapons maintenance, Petty Officer. Henderson's our designated marksman. Henderson's good, sir, but he's trained for standard engagement ranges. This requires computational shooting ballistic coefficient calculations, Coriolis effect, spin drift compensation. I've been tracking environmental changes since we arrived." Sarah's gray eyes met Morrison's steadily. "Those British soldiers are going to die if someone doesn't take that shot in the next 3 minutes." Morrison stared at her, seeing something he'd never noticed before. The absolute stillness of someone who'd made life and death decisions before. "Mackenzie, if you miss—" "I won't miss, sir." Henderson looked up from behind the Barrett, sweat beading despite the mountain cold. "Commander, I can keep trying, but she's right about the range. This is beyond what I've trained for." Morrison made the decision that would haunt or vindicate him forever. "Mackenzie, you have one shot. Make it count." Sarah moved behind the Barrett with fluid precision, her movements economical and practiced. She made minute adjustments to the scope, her fingers dancing across turret clicks with mathematical certainty. Morrison watched through his spotting scope as she settled into position, her breathing slowing to the deep rhythm of someone entering an almost meditative state. "Target is the fighter with the PKM machine gun, center compound, behind the stone wall," Morrison called softly. "I see him," Sarah replied, her voice distant, focused. "Range 3,247 meters. Wind correction 8.2 mils left. Elevation 31 clicks up. Coriolis drift compensation 0.7 mils right." Morrison had never heard anyone recite ballistic data with such casual precision. Through his optics, he could barely make out individual figures at that distance, yet Mackenzie spoke as if she was reading measurements from a blueprint. Barrett's report echoed across the valley like thunder. Through his spotting scope, Morrison saw the Taliban fighter's head snap back, the PKM falling silent. The shot had taken 3 full seconds to reach its target, traveling through air so thin that conventional wisdom said accurate fire was impossible. "Tango down," Sarah reported calmly. "Already cycling the bolt. 3,247 meters. Confirmed kill." Before Morrison could fully process what had just happened, Sarah was already tracking her next target. Fighter with the RPG, second building from the left, range 3,190 meters. The second shot followed 10 seconds later. Another impossible hit that silenced a rocket-propelled grenade position, threatening the British patrol. Then a third target, a sniper who'd been picking off wounded soldiers from a minaret, 350 meters away. Each shot demonstrated not just marksmanship but tactical awareness that Morrison had only seen in the most experienced operators. Sarah wasn't just hitting targets. She was systematically dismantling the Taliban's ability to conduct coordinated fire on the British patrol, identifying key personnel, and eliminating threats in order of tactical priority. "Where the hell did you learn to shoot like that?" Henderson asked, his voice filled with professional amazement rather than wounded pride. "My grandfather taught me in Alaska," Sarah replied, never taking her eye from the scope. "Master Gunnery, Sergeant William Mackenzie, 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines." He said precision shooting was about making the impossible look routine. Morrison keyed his radio to coordinate with the British patrol, but part of his mind was trying to reconcile what he was witnessing with everything he thought he knew about military capability development. Mackenzie was executing shots that required years of advanced training, using environmental calculations that challenged seasoned snipers, and doing it with a calm professionalism that spoke to extensive combat experience. "Mackenzie," he said during a lull in the engagement, "what's your longest confirmed kill shot?" "This one, sir." The previous record was 2,840 meters, northern Alaska, bull caribou at -32 degrees Fahrenheit. She paused to make a scope adjustment. Of course, that wasn't in combat conditions. The casual way she mentioned a shot that exceeded most military snipers' capabilities made Morrison realize he'd been fundamentally wrong about his weapons tech. This wasn't someone who'd stumbled into exceptional shooting. This was someone who'd been hiding world-class capability behind a maintenance assignment because the system couldn't recognize what she was. The after-action report from that mission would eventually become classified reading at the Scout Sniper School in Quantico. But Morrison's immediate concern was recalibrating his understanding of the woman who'd just saved a British patrol through marksmanship that defied conventional training doctrine. "Mackenzie, I owe you an apology," he said once the British forces had successfully extracted their wounded. "I made assumptions about your capabilities based on your assignment rather than your demonstrated performance." "No apology necessary, sir," Sarah replied, beginning the methodical process of cleaning the Barrett. "You couldn't have known. The system doesn't really have a place for what I do." "What exactly do you do?" "Because what I just witnessed wasn't standard military training." Sarah smiled slightly, the first time Morrison had seen her expression soften. "My grandfather believed that marksmanship was just applied mathematics with consequences. He taught me to think of shooting as engineering, understanding all the variables, then applying consistent technique to achieve predictable results. Most military snipers learn to make good shots within standard ranges. He taught me to make impossible shots routine through preparation." Morrison nodded slowly, beginning to understand the distinction. "How long have you been shooting at these distances?" "Since I was 12, sir. Alaska gives you room to practice, and my grandfather had stories about shots he wished he could have made in Vietnam if he'd understood the science better. He made sure I understood the science." Over the following weeks, Morrison quietly investigated Sarah's background and discovered what the Navy's assignment system had missed. She'd grown up in an environment that produced natural long-range shooters, trained by someone who understood both the tactical and technical aspects of precision shooting, and developed skills through thousands of hours of practice that most military personnel never received. The only thing missing was official recognition of capabilities that exceeded many specialized operators. Morrison's recommendation for Sarah's transfer to the SEAL Sniper program was approved within 30 days, accompanied by a formal commendation for actions that saved multiple Allied lives. Her first assignment was as primary instructor for extreme-range shooting techniques, teaching SEAL snipers the computational methods that could extend their effective range by over 1,000 meters. 6 months later, Morrison watched Sarah instruct a class of SEAL snipers in advanced ballistic calculations, her quiet authority commanding respect from operators who'd initially questioned learning from someone who'd never been through BUD-S. Her teaching methods combined theoretical knowledge with practical experience, showing students how environmental awareness could turn impossible shots into achievable objectives. "The rifle doesn't know your gender, your rank, or whether you went through traditional selection," she told one skeptical student who'd questioned her credentials. "It only knows whether you understand the physics and have practiced enough to apply that understanding under pressure. Master those two things, and distance becomes just another variable in the equation." Morrison had learned something important about military capability. Excellence could develop in unexpected places, and traditional selection processes might overlook exceptional talent that didn't fit conventional patterns. Sarah's abilities hadn't emerged from standard military training, but from unique circumstances that produced skills the military desperately needed. Her innovations in long-range shooting techniques were eventually incorporated into official SEAL training doctrine, and her methods for environmental calculation became standard curriculum at advanced sniper schools. The weapons maintenance tech, who'd been invisible to most operators, became the instructor who taught them to make shots they'd previously considered impossible. "You know what I learned from this?" Morrison told Master Chief Ramirez during one of their weekly briefings. "Sometimes, the most valuable capabilities are hiding in plain sight. We just have to be smart enough to recognize them when they reveal themselves." The story of Sarah Mackenzie's emergence from weapons tech to elite instructor illustrates something important about how exceptional capability develops and reveals itself. Traditional military selection processes are designed to identify candidates who meet established criteria, but they may miss individuals whose excellence developed through different paths. Sarah's grandfather had understood that precision shooting was ultimately about problem-solving under pressure, analyzing variables, making calculations, and executing technique consistently regardless of external conditions. He'd trained her, not just to shoot accurately, but to think systematically about marksmanship as applied science. When the moment came to demonstrate those skills operationally, she was ready not because of formal military training, but because of preparation that exceeded military standards. Her story also demonstrates how institutional assumptions can obscure exceptional capability. Morrison's initial assessment of Sarah, as technically competent but operationally limited, wasn't based on malice, but on experience that suggested capability development followed predictable patterns. He'd learned that combat effectiveness usually required specific types of training and experience, making it difficult to recognize when someone had developed equivalent capabilities through different methods. The British patrol that Sarah saved that day benefited from her unique combination of technical knowledge, practical experience, and tactical awareness capabilities that existed because she'd been prepared for opportunities that hadn't yet presented themselves. Her grandfather's training had given her skills that lay dormant until circumstances required them, at which point they emerged fully formed and immediately effective. Have you ever been underestimated because your background didn't match conventional expectations? Have you ever discovered that someone you'd categorized based on their current role possessed capabilities that far exceeded what their position suggested? Sarah Mackenzie's story reminds us that excellence often develops in unexpected places, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Share this story if you believe that talent and dedication matter more than traditional pathways to recognition. The military is stronger when it recognizes and utilizes exceptional capability, regardless of how or where that capability developed. Thanks for reading this story about how preparation meets opportunity and how hidden excellence can emerge when lives depend on performance. If you enjoyed learning about Sarah Mackenzie's journey from invisible weapons tech to elite instructor, subscribe for more stories about military professionals who exceeded expectations and changed how we think about capability and recognition.